I am the Chief Commercial Officer of a tech startup that is helping the dry bulk industry gain access to real-time inventory level insights. And these insights are helping the decision makers make decisions that are then optimizing the operations and improving profitability. You might ask why I might introduce myself in this manner. And it's speaking to particular challenges that entrepreneurs face. And one of the biggest is being able to articulate what you do in a manner that is relatable, simple, yet compelling. Uh, and whether you want to call it your elevator pitch, your intro, if there's anything you take away from my talk today is you need to be working on that every day because I still do and will probably continue till I hang up my entrepreneurial boots. As said again, I think there is, I am an Atteridgeville born entrepreneur. And, there's a lot that can be said given that, in the past year, as an Atteridgeville born boy, I've managed to, in 2020, be able to make it into Silicon Valley, uh, a prestigious accelerator there, and managed to also convince the investors there to be able to buy into our business. And the key reflection I take into that is, something must have gone right. And in my talk today, I see all the tools that have been imparted for you by the colleagues here at the symposium. And I'd like to bring that into storytelling narrative to speak to what key elements have um, imparted on my life and have continued to serve me well in my journey. As a key start off, the key element is to think about what is success and what does that mean for you. Because in the world we live in now, it's easy to be swallowed by what your environment may define your aspirations to be. And when we look forward now, I'll introduce a poll shortly, just to get a feel from the entrepreneurs around the table, the fellow panelists, as to, for each of us, do you have a clearly defined definition of what success means for you? Um, I'll speak of the stories, and in terms of successes that I've had in the past, is they've all come from me being very clear about what I wanted to achieve, whether it's finishing my degree in record time, getting to work, even making the big decision of leaving the workplace from a point of view of saying that I perhaps wasn't a person that thought entrepreneurship was for me. Uh, I think that is very critical. I hope the poll will be put up shortly. Uh, but I think it's a critical thing to be able to define success in your terms, because in that light, um, when things get really difficult, as they do, you don't then look backwards and think about, I should have perhaps stayed in my job. Or I look at my peers and say, given what I studied and I could have fallen back on my career, this is where I could have been in management and so on. When things get difficult now, because I have a clear definition of the type of impact I can make as an entrepreneur and the impact that the business that I work on can make, I then get to a point where for myself, um, I'm saying that each day there's a huge sense of fulfillment because I'm able to say there's one, two, three tasks that I've been able to accomplish that are linked to my own personally defined element of success. Oh, there we go. I mean, it's a good turnaround. We have 80% mentioning that they have a clear definition of what success means for them, which is a very good starting point. Very, very good starting point. And I think before we move on to the next slide, I'd like to speak to saying for the 20%, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's something that I'd implore that on a weekly basis, even if it's once on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, start thinking about what success means for yourself. Because there is a huge sense of fulfillment that comes from being able to carry out a task that you've set for yourself to fulfillment. It will help you keep the focus when the barrage of distractions start to question why you started this business or why you took the leap to begin with. Yeah. One of the key elements I'd speak of, and in terms of these are three elements, one of three elements that I feel like have molded my own personal life, my personal journey, and what have brought me here to the point where I'm able to speak to an audience of entrepreneurs, change makers, people that are willing to actually contribute positively to the environment, is exposure. Um, there's a lot of the things I'm aspiring towards now that would not have been unlocked had I not met certain people, had I not engaged in certain experience, had I not read certain books, had I not sought out mentors, advisors, and you would have seen throughout the program today, there's many resources that have been opened up to you. And it's then tapping into that. And I hope even the presentations will be shared. I mean, a colleague, Jabu, they shared immense tools that can then help also unlock parts of your potential that you otherwise would not have thought were possible. You know, for me, um, my talk will be also anecdotal largely because as I reflect on the things that I saw as a young man, the two images that come out prominently are of my grandparents or grandfathers on both the maternal and paternal side. You know, from the paternal side, I grew up every month. My grandfather used to load us into his 1400 bakkie, load us up with some of my friends from the township, from Attridgeville, and take us to Winterness, where he would go through a couple of, freestanding units to collect rent in his briefcase, and the brown one, I think I remember. I think I probably was 5 or 6 at the time. Um, these images started to play in my mind when I started trying to get my first property. And I thought, you know, my grandfather had multiple properties. I'm here busy struggling to get one, what is the difference? And it's those thoughts that start propelling a desire towards more. Had I not seen those images coming up, which might not have meant anything when I was younger, as because they're imprinted in my subconscious, they start to sort of breed a yearning for more accomplishment, greater achievement. And so as a result, then I look at different types of investment. Are there equity type of properties that I can buy? Can I buy an investment property? Can I do this? And then looking at my other grandfather, he more modern, humble beginnings, but he was a farmer that was then providing for his community, waking up every day, living off the land, and even had a shop which we were fortunate enough to sell in when we were there on holidays. Already small entrepreneurial seeds are being planted. Even though at some point I'd like to live off the land, I think the snakes part of it is still something that's putting me off it for a bit. But I think we'll get over that. But the biggest factor there is saying, how can I be of value uh, more than just, feeding my own self? How do I then start thinking about becoming uh, a person of value in my community, a person that can start driving change, contributing towards a change narrative, a better world, you know? And this speaks to sort of foundations. And I mean, I had siblings that were entrepreneurs. Then as I grew up, then I'm starting to see there's, car dealerships, there's consultancies, but personally throughout, I thought I'd be a person that would retire in the workplace because that's probably the vision I had for myself because I was passionate about what I'd studied. But at some point, that no longer served me. And then I took the leap. But it's so important to be exposed to so many things. At some point, I thought I'd be an artist, painting, music, but that didn't happen. But I think remnants of that, still play into the way I approach my work. key element here is what you look for is, this is probably, if you take anything else from this, from my presentation, is what I've learned is it's not about what you're offering. It's not about your product or service. Is it the fastest? Is it the latest technology? Does it include, I mean, our space will speak about machine learning, uh, driving visibility, is going to optimize. There's all these fancy words that, they sound smart, they sound great to the niche market that of people that really engage in that space, that understand it, and there's a fellow sort of respect, for the big words you can use. But it's not about what you're producing. Uh, it's in relation to how it solves a customer pain point. How does a customer experience what you do? Does it make it life easier for them? Uh, does it solve their problem? Does it enable them to save time? Does it allow them to meet their KPIs? Does it allow them to save money? Um, and for that, you need a level of empathy that is next level, because you need to connect to an individual that is behind the title, an individual that is, struggling with the frustrations and the pressures of a work environment, and start thinking about, how can I make this person's life easier? Um, a key lesson I learned from our early days, starting the Cunham business was, with all our fascination with the product, we had actually made it difficult for customers to buy into it. They like the idea, they can get excited about it, but because we hadn't connected with what does that mean for them, it then becomes a difficult buy. Right? So people want to support you, but they want to see first what's actually going to happen with this thing. And it's through experiences, bringing on advisors, giving you a different perspective, engaging more customers, and sitting with this problem for, I mean, if you could guess, 4 years, I think. I've been in business 6 years, but in this particular one, we've sat on this problem for 4 years. And don't worry, we were consulting, doing other core business elements. But in terms of the core product that is now, we're looking to patent, we're driving commercially, globally effectively. But it took 4 years to really sit and understand, um, how this problem manifests, what is the pain points, and how does it then affect the full organization. Now, when I'm asked about it, I can fully answer and speak to it because I've sat on it for that long. And I like this quote by James Dyson, because that sort of creativity can't be in and of itself. It has to be grounded in a pain point. Rather sit in that problem for as long as you need to, thinking about, how can I make this easier? How can I work? How can I get this thing to the customer's door? How can I get it to them when they're really craving it most? How can I give them that insight when they need to report to the board? It's really things you need to then think of. I mean, my colleague there spoke about questions. You need to be really probing and probing. I mean, even to this day, we're asking, how can we improve this a lot further? How can we make, the reporting on the other side? How can we improve finances life easier, as opposed to just the operations guys or the MD? It's a continuous cycle where you push forward the innovation, uh, key, and for us, it drives your relevance in the industry for the customers, but also it ensures that you as a business have a sense of meaning. I think before, in the first couple of years, especially when financially it starts to take a strain, one starts to think, oh, maybe I can just go back and start working, or you think of side hustles, or you think of this, because it hadn't taken hold. The sense of meaning in terms of what we do, because it wasn't solving a real customer pain point. We hadn't structured it in a way that way it was having a meaningful impact to a person on the other side, or an industry on the other side. It didn't really motivate. Now I'm able to work some crazy hours, which I wouldn't recommend, but because we're dealing with people in the US and whatnot, I do have meetings 10 whatnot, but it doesn't really it doesn't really hold me back. I'm motivated by this. I'm learning every day. Uh, if you're to look at your business, you need to invest a lot of time in the build initially. You're building sales structures, you're building your social media, and I'm sure you'll learn about that. You're building your legal side, protecting the business. Because this is your baby, it's growing. I mean, speak about invest in it, get it clothes, get it shoes, so that it's presentable. Do branding, get the logo. All of those things add up in the long run. But all of that can be brought to mean very little if the business itself is not tied to a core customer pain point. This is my last point in terms of speaking, and probably one of the more passionate points. Being on the commercial side, I understand the nature of conversion. Uh, if you've spoken to 200 customers and only one ends up being a paying customer, in sales, you might feel a bit dejected because we're afraid of being rejected as people. There's that fear of going out there, this baby that I've developed, people don't like it and whatnot. But in the business world, that's really the name of it. There is no other secret uh, that you can put out there. You really need to be aggressive in terms of saying, getting this that I believe to be of value to the people that need it most. You know, thinking beyond your immediate circle, thinking beyond circles that thinking beyond circles that your people know, and starting to even think globally. Because when you're solving, there's no such thing as a small problem, because you might find that what it is that you're offering here in South Africa has a need somewhere across the globe, in Ukraine, um, or in Asia. And it's then asking yourself, can I really make it there? I think before, I would have been like, oh no, there wouldn't have been a thought to think beyond our borders. But the reality is, there are people. We are people connected globally, and the same problems we have, they might be said differently, but in another part of the globe, in a different language, to different grammar, uh, but it's still the same problem. So how do you then get to service that market? We think of the Ubers of this world. We think of, the Taxifiers or Bolt as it is, Uber Eats, Mr. Delivery. These are all global businesses. You think of your Amazons, as you spoke about that. They're coming in because the guys are saying, we have something that can be of benefit on the other side of the world. Yes, there's a commercial aspect to it, but it's also saying, I'm glad they are here because they make my life easier on a day when I'm had back-to-back meetings and I'm tired and I can't cook. Uh, I would go in for an Uber Eats or order from the clubhouse next door, or so the proximity is key, but it's also saying, how can you make it easier given the situation that I'm in? This slide in particular for me seeks to cover a key element that says, the core traditional sort of door-to-door sales principles. And I spoke about earlier about being able to articulate yourself well in a relatable, simple, and compelling way. Those narratives you need to be able to sell to customers, and a lot of them. It won't be enough to be able to say, oh, I've spoken to 50 customers today, or I've spoken to 2 people, or I'm afraid of speaking to people. Yes, the digital tools help you reach a bigger audience. They make it easier to get into sight of customers and potential customers, but you still have to have that core narrative, that core need to say, I've got these bag of amakwini, I've got these bag of chocolates of selling on the side of the street, and I'm going in to say, I need to put this in front of X amount of people. 80% might not buy into it, but I must not give up because there'll be 20 that will. That is really the nature of the game. The effort you put in will ultimately lead to the results you seek out. And I'm speaking now for the journey ahead. For us as a business now, yes, we've secured investment, we've got advisors. We're looking to grow globally. But I think key essentially is we're still building. We're still waking up, working hard every day, and I'm relying more and more on a network of support structures. One thing that I'll sort of advise in terms of the starting out is you cannot do everything yourself. Seek out, there are sort of voucher programs, there are things that you need to invest in. That 100 Rand can be invested in buying a domain, or it can be hosting your email. It can be invested in advertising your product or service. In some of these, you can probably get some facilities that allow you to come in, um, rent for a while, but explore these options because they're out there. There are grant programs, there are accelerator programs, there are incubator programs that can allow your business to actually go from being a small business to then a medium business. And that might be enough. That might be a massive achievement. But if you're not looking out for them, those opportunities then remain closed. And for me, that is really the closing point to say, take that leap and continue to take that leap every morning. It's an uncomfortable experience daily, but, keep pushing the boundaries. Thank you.